The last section of our recorded resources for structured advising for the ePortfolio is the leadership section. In this section, this is where graduation with leadership distinction gets its name. We want you to apply what you've learned through the key insights, through your experiences, to think creatively and to use problem-solving skills to lead through an area in your community, in your field or your area of study, or through your relationships. We want you to think critically about how you can go and make a difference in an area. The leadership section includes three distinct elements. The first is a statement of problem. We want you to clearly describe a problem or an issue within its context and background, why that issue is relevant or is distinguished, and why it's a reasonable issue for you to address. The next section is a solution or a recommendation. We want you to think about how you would address that problem. What do you know now through your key insights, through your experiences and your learning, through all of that growth and transformation? What do you know now that equips you to address this problem? What makes you the expert in the room to recommend this solution? And the last step is a detailed plan. We want to know how you would go about implementing change. We want you to think about step-by-step details of implementation for that recommendation that you've made. How would you go about doing it? What would be your first step, second step, third step? How would you justify it through your key insight learning? And how would you evaluate that plan to know that it's successful? Those are the three key pieces of a leadership section. And now we're going to go through an activity to get you started. The activity is listed in Appendix B. I'm going to go ahead and scroll down through our content guide to this activity. Just like the key insight activity, I recommend that you pause this video as we're going through it to get your ideas out on paper or digitally, and then come back for the next step. So like I mentioned, in the leadership section, we want you to think like a problem solver, to think creatively, using your expertise as an almost college graduate to make change in an area. We don't ask you to actually go out and implement this change or to do the solution that you've decided, but we want you to think critically as if you were going to do it, as if you were to walk out of your house or your apartment tomorrow. What would be the first thing that you do? And the second thing, and the third thing? Who would be involved? All of those details and all of that logical, reasonable information, that's what you want to include in the leadership section, because your reviewer wants to see that you could actually go out and do this, that you've put that much time and effort into thinking through what it would look like. So we define leadership, like you see on the screen, as an ability to solve problems by applying what you've learned within and beyond the classroom. And we know from our key insights that you have these transformative learning moments that have happened through your within and beyond the classroom experiences. We want to know now how you can apply them to implement real change. You identified in your key insight learning the things that are important to you or the perspectives that have been changed as a result of your experiences. Now in the leadership section, you're going to apply it to a specific issue or problem, either related to your field of study or to your community or to your overall pathway. So you can see the activity here first. We want to help you narrow down on an issue that is relevant to you. So the first thing that we want to do in this activity is to think about those outside boxes. What am I passionate about? What does the world need? What skills have I developed during college? What is my intended profession or field? Where am I heading after this? You can pause the video now and fill out those 4 boxes first. Now, if you're seeing some trends or some themes emerge through these 4 boxes about your passions and your skills and issues that you're seeing in the world, maybe a problem is emerging for you. Or maybe you already had a problem in mind, and these outside boxes are going to help you justify the issue because you're passionate about it, because it's related to your profession or related to skills that you've developed. These things go together, they're connected. So you can use the outside boxes to help you come up with an issue or problem, or you can start with the issue or problem and use the outside boxes to justify why that's relevant to you. But you want to come up with a substantive problem. We see a lot of students choosing issues or problems that are very large, things like world hunger. And those are things that, while they are worthy causes and real issues in our world, they are not something that is easy to tackle right now today. If you are just one person, can you realistically solve world hunger within the next month or 6 months or even year? Probably not, right? So what we want you to do is narrow down that problem scope to make it something that you could realistically address. And we've got some ideas to help you narrow it down. So here in the content guide, step 2 are some ideas that you can do that you can think about to get more specific in your issue, to narrow it down to something that you can do realistically within the next several months. So maybe you think about world hunger in just one aspect of that issue. So maybe you're looking at it through just a rural hunger, just one aspect through one community lens, one facet of hunger. Maybe you're looking at different components, breaking down a large problem into smaller parts. So you can see the example here of using tobacco with adolescents and maybe just focusing on chewing tobacco instead of all forms of it. Or maybe you focus on just female users or a certain age range, breaking it down into a smaller group or component. You can also break down by location. We see this very often to narrow your focus on just one specific location. Maybe that's Columbia, because that's where you're based right now in USC. Maybe you want to look at where you're headed for graduate school or your job and focus on that community. Maybe you want to look at your hometown. All of those are reasonable ways to narrow down a large problem into something that is much more specific to you. You can also look at relationships like cause and effect, compare and contrast, a group versus individual. All of those things can help you focus in on an issue. You can also look at time. So you want to think about sort of like a SMART goal. Think about your issue that is measurable, that is realistic, that is attainable within a time limit. You can do that by looking at time-bound boundaries or place and location boundaries to really put as much concrete detail in your problem as you can to make it more manageable or more feasible. And then the last one is type. So example here, instead of looking at safer traffic patterns, you could just focus on SUVs or just focus on student drivers or just focus on stoplights or one specific stoplight in an area even. So all of those things can help you narrow it down, but you want to take it from world hunger level issues to something that you reasonably could tackle right now today. So think about your big issue and then think about a smaller issue that you want to tackle and put that in your center box on your activity. So I'm going to let you pause and think about your smaller issue, and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, step 3, if you have a hard copy of your activity for leadership, this is the back of the worksheet. Otherwise, it's just the next piece if you scroll down. So in this next piece of leadership, we have our issue or problem. That was one element of the leadership section. Now we want to come up with a recommendation or solution for that issue. So what you want to do is brainstorm a recommendation. So we're starting with our inside bubble here. We have our specific issue or problem that we've narrowed down to make something reasonable or manageable. Now, what is your recommendation or solution? How do you want to address that issue? What would you say would be the most efficient or the most effective recommendation to address that issue that you came up with? So take a moment and brainstorm a solution to your problem and write it in the middle bubble. All right, and now the next piece is justification. We want to tie back to your key insights in some way. The rubric that you are graded on for the ePortfolio will ask you to tie back to at least one key insight. We want to see a loose thread here. How does your leadership plan relate back to something that you did or something that you learned through your key insights? We don't want it to come totally out of left field when a reviewer is reading it, but there should be some connection between your recommendation or the problem and the key insights that you've already written. So think about how your key insights make you an expert in the room, or how your experiences have equipped you to recommend this as a solution. And why are you going to be successful in recommending this solution through your experience? What makes you qualified to recommend this? Those are all good ways to frame the impact of your key insights in applying it now to your leadership section. So you will want to make sure that is clear when you write your leadership section so that your reviewer can see a connection between your key insights and this leadership issue and solution. The last step, and this is the last element of a leadership section, is the implementation plan. So what you want to do in an implementation plan is think about all of the possible steps and all of the possible pieces involved to make your solution happen. So what are the steps that you're going to take to address that issue? How will you start? Who will you talk to? What materials or resources will you need? Who will you need to get buy-in from to be successful? And those are the things that you want to think about. Again, if you're tackling an issue that is too large, this implementation plan will be really challenging. So that might be a good test to make sure that your issue is specific enough. Can you think about the first step? Can you think about the fourth and fifth step? And if it's hard to imagine where you would start with your issue, then maybe that means your issue is too big. And think back to how you can narrow it down some more so that you have a reasonable first step. So you want to lay out step by step, what is your plan of action? For a lot of students, this does not have to take an essay format. This is the one piece of the ePortfolio that you can get a little creative with. You can have a bulleted list to talk about your implementation plan. Maybe you include a chart, but what you want to do is make sure that the reviewer can clearly see your critical thinking and your creative problem-solving skills, that you've really thought through how you would implement this change or this solution. So you want to write out your steps, how you're going to do that step. So who are you going to talk to? What are you going to need? Do you need money? How are you going to get the money? All of those questions that are going to make it very logically thought out. And then you also want to include some justification of your reasoning. Think of it like a proposal. You want to know that you are taking the right next steps, and your reviewers want to know that you're taking the right next steps. So you want to say, I'm implementing this step 2 as opposed to this other option because this is a better option for me, or this is going to help me reach my solution in a more efficient way, or be more effective in the long run. Justify every step along the way as much as you can to make sure that you have really thought out why each step is the most effective thing for your solution to your problem, the most efficient way to address your issue. So you're going to write out the plan, the steps in whatever format makes sense for you. You will likely have more than 5 steps at the end of it, and it's okay. This worksheet is just to get you started thinking about your detailed plan. The last piece, and this is the very bottom question here, is how will you know your plan is successful? If you hypothetically have now gone and implemented your plan, how will you know that it worked? What methods will you use to measure your plan or your solution to know that it was successful? So you can think about things in terms of assessment or evaluation. How will you know that this thing that you have decided to do has worked? And if you include details like that, along with very well thought out implementation plans, very well justified recommendations and solutions to a very specific problem, then that can get you extra points on the rubric towards a 4 or that exceeding expectations. So you can think about that. It is certainly not a requirement, but we do see a lot of students including that evaluation plan in their leadership sections. That is all that you need to know to complete the leadership section. I know that there are several differences between the leadership section and the key insights. This is much more forward thinking. It's much more abstract and hypothetical, whereas the key insights are reflective and a lot more concrete based on your experiences. But we want you to flex a little bit. Think about in a different way how you can make a difference, using all the ways that you've already made a difference during your time in college. That's what GLD is all about. Using a different side of your brain, thinking critically, showing leadership skills to a future employer or graduate school. Really show off your skills here. This is the place to do that. So I will let you go and get started on the leadership section. Note that this is our last video for recorded resources for the ePortfolio. We don't have a video for the About Me section, but I trust that you can use the content guide to write that one on your own. We feel fully confident in your abilities here. You can use the rubric as a resource as well. Here you are. This is the About Me page. Just so you know, it is page 3. So you can get started on that, and then you'll be ready to write your leadership section, your About Me, and transfer it all to a wonderful website. Good luck.